Welcome to the second part of our look at the candidates for the mayor of El Paso. Each candidate did receive an invitation to appear on this forum, but only those present accepted the station's invitation. Gentlemen, time is limited, so you'll have only 2 minutes per question, and a signal to wind up your response will be given at 30 seconds. In terms of the whole issue of transparency, and that's something that's come up with a lot of people that I've talked to, how specifically can you make El Paso's government more transparent, and where do you think we've lacked transparency in areas maybe other than the stadium issue, which comes up over and over again? Beginning with Jaime.
Certainly respecting freedom of information requests should be a no-brainer. Consistent with the Attorney General's opinion, this council has been terrible in terms of providing. I think their record is 50 to 60% of the requests they respond to, and then the rest they challenge. In other words, they don't want to let people know what they're really talking about, what they're dealing with behind the scenes. The second thing is that there's this kind of like underground lobbyist function that goes on. I saw this from the inside when I was chief of staff at the county, that you got these lobbyists in the guise of interested observers of the goings-on of the local government that are basically cutting the deals with the elected officials, and then, 3 months later, appears on the agenda by magic and then just kind of scrolls by and no one really notices because it's on the consent agenda. So transparency is not just responding to information requests, it's also not having those meetings. It's also being able to say, no, I don't want to meet about this issue. If you want to talk to me about this issue or about some bid or some vendor, come to, like everybody else, get in line, go to the podium and tell everybody what it is that you're proposing. You want a sports venue? Come to the podium and tell everybody. Don't go play golf with the city manager. Don't go play golf with the mayor or the city representative or commissioner. Come to the in front of us and tell us what you want, and then respond so you can have that dialogue way before a decision is made, and when everybody realizes it's a done deal, there's not even any point in opposing it.
Like I said a minute ago, transparency is, deals done in the day of light, not in the back room. And you have to have a real open door policy, and you have to obey by the open records law. There's a law that says that if you conduct any type of business and it's business that represents the city, you must share it with the people that put you in office, and that's the citizens of El Paso. And you need to follow that rule, and you need to follow the law. And again, the open door policy is the best policy you can have, and to not hide anything from the voters.
Now, do you think that in fact has happened? That things have been done?
Remember,
not according to that.
At the beginning, I will never disrespect anybody, but I can always tell you that what I would do when I'm elected, what I will expect of everybody with my leadership, that will be not an exception but a policy.
Yes.
Holly, we're talking about transparency, and I believe I'm the only candidate in this 8-man crowded field that actually has proven himself as a transparent individual, as an appointed official of El Paso. Most importantly, I agree with the law. When you violate the law that these gentlemen have been talking about, I think that's a very important factor that really kind of disqualifies you for public service, and even if you're an elected official. But as chairman of the Bond Overview Advisory Committee for the year 2000, $141,500,000 bond issue, and as chairman of the City Plan Commission, I held community meetings throughout the county, throughout the city, and invited public discourse so that we could prove to the citizens of El Paso what we were doing. And under my leadership, we had a complete transparent agenda. So I did not send out the employees of the city or of the plan department or of the engineering department that were administering and executing the bonds or the new laws and the new polity under the Plan Commission. I actually went out there, the commissioners and I went out there, the committee members of the Bond Overview Advisory Committee actually did this. So transparency is about communication. It's about inviting the community into a dialogue early on so that their opinions can be respected. I once had a conversation with one of the elected officials that sits on council today, and she was on one of my committees, and I asked her, I said, you know, I understand that government is of the people, by the people, and for the people. And she said, yes, and I was elected to execute it. That's rather arrogant, I think.
Robert?
Two things on this, Holly. I've worked with kids, young people, for the last 17 years. I have a cell phone, and that gets into the hands of a kid probably twice a week, 3 times a week. They're free to go through my email. They're free to go through my phone list. If I'm not willing to say something with my mouth, I'm not going to put it in a text. I'm not going to write it on my phone, and I'm not going to send it. My conversations to my wife would probably be a little bit of exclusion to that, but I'm an open book, and I'm transparent. Kids ask us continually, so what was your marriage like when you first got married? I'm like, oh man, you don't want to hear this story. But the truth is that that's who we need to be as a society. We need to be able to say, hey, if I'm not willing to say it with my mouth, I'm not going to write it on a piece of paper. That concerns me when people say, don't look at that, or I don't want you to see that, or give me that so nobody will see it. And the second issue, I think we could do a better job with our city website. We could make it available easily. We could tell people what we're in debt. We could tell them where we're at as a city, what's functioning well, what's not. I think that we could make that a little bit more navigated, where you can navigate around that in the website, the city's website, and it would be very helpful to all that want to know more about the city.
Okay, thank you. Robert, I'm going to begin this next question with you, another one from my students, and they said, recently, President Obama gave the order to reduce the number of customs agents, which has now increased the waiting time at every international bridge. And this is affecting, they think, the El Paso economy and the students who come across the bridge every day, especially the community college and university students. How would you work to improve that, and with whom would you work?
The CBP is, for all intents and purposes, is working. That's the Customs Border Protection. They're working as hard as they can on that. There are some things down the pipe that really, really look good. I think that it's one of the places, it's called Secure Solutions here, or Origins, here in El Paso. They're working with the commercial commerce coming through into the United States. They're using GPS tracking devices to help the semis that come in and navigate across the bridge, which frees that up. That's a great, and they've already got a grant from the city, and they're working on that, trying to streamline that, where that would be better. And an interesting fact on this is, in 2005, this is not something that's just happened just in the last few months, but 2005, we were running twice the amount of vehicles across the bridges. That's cut in half since 2005, and that was well after 9/11, and something is not working well. I think we have to come together and work on that in a better way. And I think that you work with CBP hand in hand in that. The city owns some of those bridges, and we've got to be able to make them successful. And I think that we could do that here if we work with the city better.
Jaime?
Almost 2/3 of the economy are a function of Fort Bliss and trade with Mexico. And one solution is to simply relieve the congestion by pushing out the truck traffic. And you do that by creating, for example, Butterfield Trail at the airport, and have a dedicated road with GPS, as was mentioned, directly to that place for trucks, where the trucks could be inspected there with all of the technology and the x-rays and the devices and so on and so forth, so that you can free up those lanes for commuters. We have a tremendous number of commuters every day that come back and forth across that bridge. Trade with Mexico is essential. In fact, that is the #1 reason why El Paso has not done as poorly as other cities is simply because that money coming from Mexico, that trade with Mexico, is what's propping up the local economy. So I think it's very important that we start looking at this in a slightly different way. We could have all of those lanes open and let that commuter traffic flow smoothly. But when you have that tremendous congestion with the commercial truck traffic, that's what slows it down. And I think if we just be a little bit more creative, and it's not like we have to acquire a whole lot of land. There's a lot of federal land available. There's a lot of warehousing available where you can just move it further in so that you can have that inspection process and speed up the daily commute.
Well, you know, we talk about the car lines and how long the lines are, but, you know, no one's, and I've been reading and watching about what everyone's talking about, no one's talking about the lines when you're walking across, and I think that's really important also. And the only way you're going to be able to get back to speed is you're going to have to work with Congress, you're going to have to work with Senate, you're going to have to work with the people that can get us funding. You have to get funding. So we have to build a case, we have to have a master plan that we can go back to them and say, you know what, we can't get cut because we have this, we have that, and be able to get our funding back. So you got to get it, you know, we have to get the funding. We can build bridges, we can do this, but like we said, we don't have the manpower. So without manpower, we don't have anything. We still have lines. So we have to really focus on two things, making sure that the walking lanes become a little faster. Because I've had some people walk up and say, what are you going to do about the walking lanes? Well, we have to work with the people that can make a difference for us and get a master plan and take it back up to Washington and say, this is why we need it. And I think that we can build value and build a plan that will help us get the funding that we need to put the people back on the bridges.
Gus?
Holly, what we're actually talking about is being studied now, and it's transformational. Let me give you two examples. Texas A&M was asked by the Texas Department of Transportation a few years ago to look into this problem, and they've come up with a problem, and they want to beta test it here in El Paso, and basically what it is it's a freight shuttle. Holly, right now we cross 2,500 semi-trailers an hour on the bridges. If we were successful in being able to build a freight shuttle, which basically takes, the semi would deliver the trailer to a Juarez station, it would come, lift on a monorail across the border, all of the inspection would take place through that monorail, come back down to a station on El Paso, and it would be able to process 5,000 semis an hour, which would double the transportation the transportation of goods across our border. Imagine what that would do to our economy if we were able to do that. And I actually also agree with Oscar about coming across. I used to be involved, as you know, in a maquila in Juarez. And recently I went over to have a meeting with one of the guys that we used to be involved with, and it took me 2.5 hours in the sweltering sun to sit across and come across that border. It's terrible. It's inhumane. There were kids with, there were babies that were throwing up. There were babies that needed water. There's not even water on the bridges when you're walking across. The city controls those bridges. We can do something about that. We can build shade. We can put water stations out there. The solution is there. It's transformational, and it's in beta test right now. And it's being vetted with private industry right now. Dr. Roop was in town last week, and he was vetting his freight shuttle, and it's in El Paso. Will be the first place, and it is transformational. And that's what we need to do, is transform those bridges.
And so this project is precipitated by the state or by the federal government?
It was precipitated by the state, but it's a private industry answer to our freight problems across the border.
That's what we need.
Absolutely.
Okay, Gus, we've ended with you. We're going to begin with you on the next question.
Okay.
Another big issue that several senior citizens have brought up is the whole issue of property taxes. Property taxes in El Paso are higher, in fact, than in Dallas and Austin. We lack the industry, and students are very discouraged because they don't have hope of a lot of good, high-paying jobs when they get out of school. Beyond the typical platitudes and generalities, What industry would you go for to try to attract El Paso, and how would you try to attract it specifically?
Well, that's just a great question, because the future of El Paso depends on economic development. I don't know whether you're aware of this, but Foxconn, who is is the largest subcontractor for Apple computers, lives right across the border in San Jeronimo, by the Santa Teresa border. The answer is going to be a regional answer in transforming this city. You may not be aware, but Apple Computers announced about a month ago that they want to come back to America. They want to bring their manufacturing back to the United States. Okay, why aren't we there knocking on their door? Why aren't we there talking to Mr. Uranga, who's the plant manager at Foxconn, and saying, hey, look at us. Our economic development policies should be, what is it going to take to get you to move to our region? How would we do that? The mayor has to be the chief cook and bottle washer when it comes to economic development. He needs to be on a plane. He needs to be knocking on doors. He needs to be the head of the committee that was recently formed, the Border Alliance. The city needs to sit at the head of that table. Why? It is your dollars, voters. It is your dollars, citizens, that we're investing in these projects. Do they have a return for you? How long before that return? As you know, Holly, I'm in an industry where I see the fact that people's taxes kick them out of the American dream, cannot qualify because their taxes are so high for a home loan. And that's very disheartening to see that, because that is the American dream. Most Americans will only own their home, and it'll be the largest investment they ever make. And so we need to provide as much tax relief. How? We need to have a proven leader go through that budget. The budget will be coming up the minute I take office. We need to make sure that we're able to take as much fat out of that budget as we can.
Robert?
I think that the number one job, especially since the mayor is considered a weak, here in El Paso is considered a weak mayor. I hate that term, but the truth is that should be the mayor's number one job, to bring industry here to our community. That has got to be at the forefront, and we've got to strengthen our local businesses, and we're going to do that by reducing red tape, holding the line on taxes, not letting, if you own a business or a home, we continually see our taxes uptick. And a lot of that is because we're not getting a good investment for our money. A good example is, I live off Arizona. There's a AB Fall Mansion. We spent $2.7 million on that building. Our return, $1 a year for the next 3 years. We cannot get that kind of return on our money and expect us to be able to hold taxes down. We've got to look at that real closely and really try and get the best bang for our buck in everything that we do here in the city. And that'll be the mayor's job. It'll be to attract industry here. You've got to go out and you've got to sell the city. We need somebody that's a salesman that says, hey, I love El Paso. I want to tell you about it. I want to tell you why it's a great place to bring your business here. I want to tell you why it's a great place to bring your family. I want to tell you why your business can succeed here. And we need a mayor that'll be willing to do that. And I'm that man.
Are there any particular businesses that you gentlemen would target? You didn't quite respond to that briefly.
I love the fact that I saw an interesting thing on coding, which is really computer language, and this is the future. In 2020, it's estimated that there'll be 1 million jobs that won't be able to be filled. We won't have the workers to fill them in that area. This is something that we should be involving the high school and the community college in, and working hand in hand with them so we can turn out the students to give those jobs, to fill those 1 million jobs that are going to be available by 2020. That would be my plan.
Jaime?
I come at this issue from a different angle altogether. All the things that have been said, great, wonderful, and so on. And in fact, as mayor, I would invite all of you to be in the Push El Paso committee to go do all the things that you want to do. But that's not the problem. The problem is structural. The problem is that we are witnessing the most obscene transfer of wealth in the history of the world from ordinary citizens to financial banks and corporations. That transfer of wealth is occurring in El Paso as we speak. We are, for example, on the sports venue, we are giving that away to an investment group who are major shareholders of local banks. Those banks are lobbying the efforts to do more of that. The Federal Reserve is bailing these banks out, is bailing these shareholders out, and so the billionaires keep getting richer and richer and richer at money with no interest. In the meantime, all the downside is for the homeowner. All the taxes from now for the next 10 years, we've already passed about $600 million, and we're probably going to do another $300 million for the pension fund and another $300 million for infrastructure. So you're talking more than $1 billion of debt that we're going to take on over the next 10 years. No return. All the revenue from the sports venue goes to the private sector, the shareholders of the very banks that are the ones pushing these deals. At the same time, the Federal Reserve is putting $85 billion a month to bail these people out. But the senior citizens, the fixed income people, those are the people that we're asking to guarantee the failure of those activities. So I think we need to deal with that structurally. I propose a 3% cut in property taxes and force that evaluation of the budget to eliminate the fat.
Well, Holly, thanks. Robert and I appreciate the vote of support when you said we need a good salesman. That was great because I consider me a great salesman. And what we have to do is, as a mayor, you have to go sell El Paso to the world. You really do. And I tell you, I've done that. I've put my money where my mouth is. I've donated to a lot of organizations in El Paso to make El Paso better. But one of the biggest things I did was I brought Hyundai to El Paso, and we are the supporters of the Hyundai Sun Bowl. And that's the type of money you need. Our first year that we supported the Sun Bowl, we brought $24 million in 1 week to the city, to the economy. That's what you need to do. And then you need to go out and you need to go find companies like Hyundai, which I've already brought to El Paso, and you need to get them to come invest in the city. You know, you can't lower taxes because simple math does tell you that you have to bring business, economic improvement to our city. So you got to bring tax-paying entities to provide jobs, to provide income, to lower what you're going to divide it by so everybody will pay less tax, or you'll continue to pay higher taxes. And second of all, one thing, you know, we're saying we've got to bring business, we've got to bring jobs. We lost Hoover. We lost Leverton. Not one person in our city went out there to interview, to ask him why we lost those thousands of jobs. There was about 1,000 jobs we lost in the city just recently, and no one went out there to find out what we did wrong to keep them and to earn their business, to keep the jobs in El Paso. That's what we need to do.
Holly, could I?
Sure.
Could I continue?
Briefly.
It will be briefly. I not only agree that we need to bring economic stimulus into El Paso by bringing new jobs and new industry, but we need to look at our own businesses that are being incubated and are here already. Have we looked at the Keck Labs and what the university is doing at the University of Texas at El Paso? There's some great research that's going on. I know just in the last week I visited with 2 world-class companies that all of their graduates come and their computer information departments are run by students, not students, but graduates rather, of UTEP. We need to look and also capitalize on what's happening in our region already.
Just a comment on Oscar.
It's a good can.
When I said a salesman, I was speaking of myself because I've been selling shoes since I was 12 years old, and I know you did the same.
I was just going to say,
we've got a lot of history that's similar, but I believe that as a mayor, that's going to be our responsibility to sell our city to everybody.
And the final question that we want to ask, and we'll start again here with Jaime. And Jaime, in your closing, would you please tell us what 3 actions you would take the first week that you assume office as mayor?
I would definitely review the tenure of our current city manager. I have real concerns with the ethics of that office. I would immediately direct our OMB, our fiscal people, our auditors, to look at cutting 3% of the property taxes. And I would immediately review and audit all of the activities related to the bonds, because it's very important that we get those bonds to support the projects that we're going to be doing over the next 10 years that were voter approved. And so we're mandated to proceed with them to make sure they're on time and on budget. And before we get in the same old game that we've always played in this town, is to ensure that we have mechanisms to provide for those people who keep giving us change orders, which is the game. They come up with a low bid and then they start doing change orders like no one's business in order to up the price of their initial bid, and figure out a way to make sure that they're penalized if they play that game. And if they miss a deadline, to penalize them, to make sure that when they bid, they're bidding real numbers and not just the same game of insider doling out of goodies for contractors. So those would be the first three things I would look at.
Oscar?
The first thing I would do is unite our city. And I think that we saw that when they voted for the city manager, where we were going to stay with the same type of format, it was a 4-4 tie, which means we're really split up. And we're working in 8 different directions. And we need to unite. You need the leadership to put everybody together to work as one. If we keep looking backwards, we'll never go forward and gain. That's the first thing I'd do. Second thing I'd do, I'd control expenses. I've been going around talking to people, and they think that, you know, that we have an open checkbook and we're not controlling expenses. We would start controlling expenses. And the third thing I would do is start a master plan. You can't just go out there and talk to all these companies and manufacturers. You need to have a game plan. And the game plan would start from day one and would not end until the day we leave office.
Yes?
Holly, the first thing I would do is I would redesign our economic development efforts and departments under the city. Recently, we're partnering with a developer from Houston who came to El Paso and could not operate, and Robert mentioned this, he could not find on the city website how to do business with the city. We're a very unfriendly city to do business with. When I was chair of the Plan Commission, the roadmap to do business on a real estate project in El Paso was 26 pages long. We reduced it to 20 pages, and we did a project recently in the Dallas area where it was a 1-page document, and we were able to get that deal done in a couple of weeks. The point here is that economic development is job 1 for El Paso. Job 2 for El Paso is to be that leader, that responsible leader that has that open and transparent government. What would that open and transparent government look like? First, we'd have to open the budget. We'd have to open those books. We have to look at where the fat is. When the city manager was hired, she had 2 assistants. There are now 7 deputy city managers in the administrative department. You know, power brings upon some real interesting consequences. And when you feel like you have an unlimited checkbook, that's a real formula for disaster. So we need to rein in all city departments. And thirdly, and most importantly, the accountability. Accountability is that ability to provide leadership, to provide that roadmap on these projects. When we did the bond issue, there were 154 projects, there were 154 projects in the 2000 bond election. And recently, one of our competitors said that our city was not interested in moving itself ahead. And I take a real umbrage to that, because in the year 2000 was the first time we were able to move this city ahead in over 25 years and vote for itself. So we've started the momentum, we need to continue the momentum, and we need to map out that future with real, responsible, accountable, transparent leadership.
Robert?
Holly, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that question?
Yeah,
Because we sort of get the answers by the time...
By the time they get to you, yeah. What 3 actions would you take the first week of office as mayor?
The first thing that I would do, being elected as mayor, I would expect them to I would expect to implement the plan that I was elected with, and that's jobs, trust, and unity. And I would get all the city manager, everybody, city department managers together, our city council, our city manager, and we'd sit down and we'd share the plan. We'd get on the same sheet of music. We'd say, this is what I've been elected for, this is what the people want to see happen, and let's do it. Secondly, I would survey the city manager, the city department. I know many people that have worked for the city. They have great ideas, and a lot of them are unwilling to share them because they think they'll be shut down, or they could even get in trouble with their job. We need to have a system where they can be surveyed, ask questions, and those 3 questions need to be: how do we save money here in our city? How do we run our city more effectively? And how do we serve the people of El Paso? That's what we are. We're a business, and we're here to serve the people here in El Paso. How can we do that? And I believe that we've got a great number of employees, city employees, that will have some phenomenal suggestions. And we can do this together, and that's part of unity in our community. It's bringing people together, solve problems, working together, and I believe we can make a stronger El Paso. But we sure can't make a stronger El Paso if we don't have jobs, if we don't have trust. That won't happen. That's why I believe that I'm the best candidate, because I want to bring unity in these areas, and I think I can do it.
Unfortunately, our time is up again. So we want to know what you think about these gentlemen and their positions on the issues affecting El Paso. Please let us know on our website, Facebook, or Twitter. Thank you so much for tuning in to this special edition of Decision Point.